Apparently, they're telling us that the election results can take at least a month before we know who was elected for president of the United States, which is insane to me.
You know what I haven't heard is why. No, they keep saying these things, but I don't really hear any like legitimate argument as to why that's happening.
Right.
Like something that makes sense. Like why would it, because I saw this interview, and if you want to play it for everybody, I guess we can talk about it.
Oh, the election. Yeah, I can play it. Here we go. So this is from the Bill Maher show, which, by the way, Bill Maher is not a Republican or a conservative. I think he's just sort of a reasonable guy, classic liberal. And so he asks questions, and he has opinions that he tries not to waver on, which I appreciate. Even if we disagree on things, I really appreciate how it feels like he's very logical and balanced with his takes. Here we go.
So the election is Tuesday. What's your prediction on when we will have a winner? Give me a date, a prediction date in the office pool.
Well,
because it's not January 5th. I mean, it's not December 5th. It might even be January 5th.
No, it might be January 5th. That's the joke. So he misspoke there and he said, well, it's not January 5th. Well, it might actually be January 5th.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's see. So by December the 11th, the governors have to render the certificates of ascertainment, which means it goes through the election process. The state settles everything that needs to be settled, and then the governors will deliver the certificates of ascertainment. And then on December 17th, the electors will meet, and then they will send in their votes. Now, this is a very arcane, antiquated system, as you know.
Yeah. Can I stop there for a second?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening? I know this is the way it works, but why are there so many? And this is why we need Elon Musk. I keep saying it. The DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. Why are there so many layers to this process?
Well, that's to certify an election. So you got to remember, we are the United States of America, right? We are not. People think of us really as just one country, but really when we came around, we were a bunch of states held together by, a figurehead of a president.
Right.
So it's really the states have power. That's what's great about us. Each state wants to live, with liberty and have their own rules. That's kind of how we were put together. And
we're like 50 little countries in a union.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. So that's why when you see, and most people don't understand today why Roe versus Wade should be pushed back to the states. That's what the framers of the Constitution wanted it to be. We've become this amalgamous giant country now where state rights really don't mean much. But it is and this is how it was created. So the reason why it takes so long is, the governors have to all do something and all of the state representatives have to do something. Now he does make a joke if you go forward here where he's like basically saying, just do the popular vote. He made like a little ding at it there, which if there was the popular vote, of course, nobody's votes in the middle of the country would matter. So that's why we have the Electoral College.
Okay.
To the archivist, to the National Archivist, then who 1 week after that will send it in to the Congress.
Well,
so,
let's hope it goes that smoothly.
Yeah,
I
geez, that's so many. I know the whole state thing, and I'm with you. I get it, but that seems like a lot of redundant positions.
Well, there's a reason why the inauguration takes place. The new president doesn't come in until January, because it takes this time from the moment the election occurs to go through all these steps so that you can actually have the person officially become the president. Listen, you don't want to make anything a snap judge decision, don't you?
No,
don't you want to give things time to, make sure you've got everything's happened properly? I mean, you got somebody who's going to rule the country for the next 4 years. I mean, I'm willing to give them 2 months. To make
2 months,
sure that it's right.
2 months to get it right so that they're installed correctly, but it shouldn't take a month for us to know if they won.
No, that's not what they're talking about here, though. They're not talking about.
They're talking about the process.
They're talking about the process. You should find out who won the night of the election.
100%.
Period.
Yeah.
Everybody should be able to report and have elections that day. You should know.
And that's what we're getting at, though, is because of this process. He's explaining the process that even that process can be delayed, and we won't know until who won that night. And I'm sorry, if you recall, we didn't know who won in 2020 either that night.
You're right. Well, because Trump was winning when we all went to bed, and then we woke up and Biden was president.
Right.
That's what the problem people have is
Right.
well, what shenanigans happened overnight that changed all
What just happened?
numbers, right? Because Brian, in every prior election before that, we always knew before we went to bed.
Right.
That was the first election in recent memory where you woke up and it was somebody different. That's why people are so freaked out about it.
Right. And there's a couple live streams going on. I forgot who. I think it's Crowder and I think Chris like Film Threat. There's a couple live streams going on that are they're gonna live stream until the election results are in. And I'm like, you guys might be here for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's true. Anthony Mark mentioned not in the year 2000, which he was right. Now that's the year that Bush and Gore fought over Florida. And that was one state. It was questionable voting because of the hanging chads, so it was hard to count the votes because they weren't sure who people voted for.
Mm-hmm.
And plus the absentee, because it was so close. In that case, you're right. That is a time when, the election may not be the next, that night. It's too close to call sometimes. It might take the morning, but on the evening of, in November in 2020, that was not the case. Trump, it looked like he was going to win for sure. And now all of a sudden, all these votes came in for Biden overnight, which makes you question whether that's real.
No, it feels sus. And then you see all these stories, passwords at voting stations, ballots never showing up to the right place, ballots being tossed in like camera. Like you can look at that footage of the poll workers tossing ballots in boxes underneath the desks, just haphazardly. Like these are things, putting boards up over the windows so that the official election watchers can't actually see in the counting room. Insane behavior coming out of these swing states. And you're asking me to fully trust, based on all this evidence I have, you're asking me to fully trust this. I mean, nothing we can do about it now, but there is something that has to be done about this so that future elections don't feel so shitty.
Right. And honestly, if you go back throughout history, listen, we're just more prone to seeing it now. If we're being really honest, this shit's probably been happening the entire time in our country of all the years. I mean, there's been, people, doing all kinds of weird, shady things. Hey, listen, go in and vote for me, and I'll give you a pint of beer when you walk out. There's been all kinds of interesting ways that we've gotten people to vote for us, and there's probably been a lot of cheating that's happened over the years. We've had many presidential races that, there was, I can't remember who it was, but which one it was, but it's very famous. The papers all put out that one person won, and then it ended up actually being the other person, because papers had to be put out in advance. Right. So,
like when Fox called Arizona, like when 1% of the people were done voting in 2020.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Like, why are you guys calling this already?
Yeah. I mean, well, sometimes they feel like the numbers are so, but you're right. There's no reason to call it so early. It's because they're competing with other news stations. And that's what that more becomes about, as opposed to reality.
Anthony said it was 1948 Truman.
There you go. Truman. That's right. Truman ended up, and it was, I think, I can't remember who it was. Dewey. That's right. It was Dewey. Dewey was supposed to they thought Dewey was going to win, but Truman won. So there's all kinds of stuff that happens, but we're in an age now where everybody's communicating. We are in the most communicating age of all ages. There is more transparency. And what we're learning by looking through the glass is that there's bad things happening on the other side of it. Those bad things have always happened. We are just now seeing them.
Right.
So
I got to say, electronic voting has got to make it a lot easier too.
It does. I mean, well, they've showed it, it's easy to hack into these
Literally
things.
have these passwords like just sitting on the desk. Like,
well, it makes you wonder,
nuts.
Why does one side want paper ballots and the other side doesn't? Why wouldn't they both want it?
Why does one side want voter ID and one doesn't? Like we talked about this last week.
Yeah.
The voter ID thing is really insane. I don't know. There's no argument that makes any sense why you wouldn't require your ID to vote. There's not a single argument. And so you have to, come to the conclusion that they don't want voter IDs so that it's easier to cheat.
Right.
Because there's no other conclusion. There's no other conclusion. You can't see the other side and be like, give me another conclusion. There is no other conclusion. That's crazy.
It's true.
All right, let's finish this clip and then we'll move on here.
That's the theory. That's why I say,
Yeah.
why don't we just have an election, and count the votes? So the Electoral College is filled with all of these booby traps where you've got a strategic bad faith actor like Donald Trump, and he will use each phase to try to revisit the result. I mean, is there anybody in the country who believes that he will accept an election that doesn't go his way?
I said that.
And this is where I want you to see that last part, because this is where it's funny. It almost feels like gaslighting. I know people use that term pretty interchangeably with a lot of random things like gaslighting or whatever. But I gotta say, it feels like gaslighting when you point out all these problems and flaws, and then you go, and this is where someone like Donald Trump, like, well, wait a minute, he's not a part of that system. He can use this bad faith actor. Donald Trump can use all these systems to make this even harder. No, he needs to. We need to be utilizing the checks and balances to make sure the election's fair. It's insane for you to assume otherwise.
Well, why wouldn't you want him at every step of the way? Now, I get he's probably not going to, if he loses, he's probably going to say it was rigged.
Sure.
But because honestly, and if Harris loses, I think they might say it was rigged.
Sure.
And I think that there's some discussion that I heard that maybe they won't, if President Trump's elected, they won't certify him being elected.
Doesn't it require the vice president to certify?
No, the vice president's the tying vote. The vice president's part of it.
Yeah.
But you have, so they, what if they chose not to have a peaceful transfer of power?
Yeah.
So
and she's the tying vote, and she's also the person.
and she's also the person running for it or whatever.
What?
Yeah. No, the vice president is supposed to.
Seems like a conflict of interest.
Would be weird. It really would be. But the point is that like, what
how is Kamala going to vote?
Right. Well, he's pushing here for not having the Electoral College and having this system where you have checks and balances. Hey, let's just leave it to the popular vote, and however it comes out, it comes out. Well, the problem is that's if you did that, California and New York would vote for the president every year.
Right. And presidents wouldn't campaign anywhere but California and New York.
Wouldn't care about anybody's issues but California's and New York's.
Right. So the entire country would be all about what California and New York care about. And I got to say, California's a dumpster fire, and New York is almost as bad.
Oh, that's Anthony Mark had a good point here. Gore had to certify the election on January 6, 2001. Gore did eventually concede to Bush, and then he certified the election. Which,
good for him.
Listen, Gore was upset, and people feel like Gore got cheated, but it was so close. Is this race between Trump and Harris going to be close, or is somehow the machine manufacturing so many votes that it gets close? You know what I mean? Because polling is showing Trump being up.